this is one of my favorite periods of the year. This is the NFL free agency, baby. I believe the legal tampering period opens, I think, March 11th. I'm not going to check that because last time I opened
Is
Chrome,
that
my whole
actually what
computer
it's
shut
called?
down. Yeah, it's the legal
legal
tampering period.
That is fucking awesome.
Yep.
I don't know why I didn't know that, but that's a hilarious name.
Yep. Football podcast that I listened to had like a 10-minute conversation about how stupid the name was.
I mean, it kind of is.
Yeah, because tampering is like specifically means doing something against the rules.
Yeah.
But now it's legal.
Yeah, I mean, when I think of tampering, I think of what like Bill Belichick and Tom Brady did to win however many Super Bowls. Like I think of like illegal shit, basically.
Well, I mean, it's like tampering in this kind of context is basically like what McCole Hardman was saying he was doing, where he's like reaching out to the Chiefs while he's playing on the Jets. This basically, because the NFL has such a weird system to where
legal illegality or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, because basically. it is still technically tampering, but it's made legal, and so the teams won't get in trouble for it. But none of the teams or the league will announce any of the signings that you will hear over the next few days until a few days after, because it's not technically official, because it's not technically they're not technically even signed yet. They're just being legally tampered with and have come to an agreement. That's the differentiation, which is really funny.
What I think it probably is they're signed, but it hasn't been given to the NHL or the NFL yet.
Pretty much. It's just not official yet. You won't see the NFL posting about it. You won't see the Seahawks or the Broncos. You won't see any of the teams posting about it. But you'll see like Ian Rappaport, Adam Schefter. They'll have it. It's a different kind of thing.
Yeah.
Anyways, we're gonna get into the top 10 free agents that are out there. The list has gotten a lot smaller as of recently because a lot of the big players that have been out there have been franchise tagged or signed to an extension. P. Higgins was a big one. L'Jarius Sneed on the Chiefs is a big one. Looking at Jalen Johnson recently got an extension from the Bears. Mike Evans got a contract extension. Lots of the big names are off the market, but that doesn't mean there aren't some all-star caliber, like Pro Bowl caliber players up here, especially with number one. Number one has been a keystone player for a Super Bowl team the last 2 years. Other than Mahomes, probably the most valuable player for that team, and that's Chris Jones. Now, in terms of Chris Jones, I don't know if he's actually going to leave. Like, I don't know if the Chiefs let that happen, but it is tantalizing, and he is a free agent technically. Anything can happen. What do you think about Chris Jones? Where do you see him fitting? Do you think he actually gets out there?
I don't know if I have a spot to throw out for him because I don't know if I haven't been following the rumor mill very much, so I don't know what the rumored landing destinations for him. But I can say that the price for him sounds absolutely preposterous. So whatever team decides to pick him up will have to have a lot of money in cap, obviously. I mean, what I'm reading here on this list that we do have in front of us is it would cost the Chiefs approximately $32 million to place a franchise tag on him, which is bonkers. I mean, as Caleb, you mentioned,
and they can't anymore.
Can they not?
They can't because they tagged Sneed, so they've already used it.
Okay,
and the deadline has passed as well.
Right. Okay. Well, like even in that sense, right? Like it's just you got to think he wouldn't be making around. Is it that crazy to say that he would be making around that much anyway? Like, or at least close?
Yeah, he probably would.
Like,
it would be close to it, yeah.
Yeah, like I think either way they're spending a bonkers amount of money. I don't know. When I look at it, I kind of think, I mean, any team that needs a better D-line and wants a chance at a Super Bowl in the next year will be going after Chris Jones if they have the money. And I mean, I was about to quote one of your favorite things to say. It seems like every time we have this conversation, but in the NFL, the salary cap doesn't exist. There's always some way around it. So you got to think the Chiefs will be doing exactly that, trying to figure out whether they have to move some salary further down the road or whether you got to move someone, cut someone, whatever. I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of teams trying to get a jump on Chris Jones. I mean, I'm curious. I'm sure you have a list of teams, or at least maybe one or two, that you'd like to see him on. Is there any that stick out to you?
As a biased Seahawks fan, the Seahawks. That's not realistic. And that's probably too early to make that kind of a move. And it wouldn't make sense for us to have got
Yeah.
like we're probably what we're going to do is just re-sign Leonard Williams, which I'm absolutely okay with, and we can talk about that later. But I don't know, Chris Jones and a Mike McDonald defense is amazing. Um, I mean, landing spots. I don't really see him going anywhere other than the Chiefs. I do think this is one where it's just going to be super anticlimactic, and he's just going to resign, because even though they have tagged Snead, they also gave him permission to seek a trade. The thing with these two is that it was never going to be possible, or even if it was possible, it was going to be incredibly difficult to keep both. And I think they're prioritizing Chris Jones. So even though they tagged Snead, I think it's just because they want to get some sort of leverage in a trade, where they want to get something for him, which is a smart move by the Chiefs. But yeah, keeping both of them is going to be super tough. But I do think they're going to go with Jones. And I honestly have not heard any chatter about him
I
going
was gonna
anywhere.
say, yeah.
Yeah, it would be a huge story if he was. And I think it's a pretty big sign that he's going to stay in Kansas City based on the fact that like there's literally no rumors going around about him. He's staying. He even said so in the Super Bowl parade. He was drunk out of his mind, but he said he was coming back. I trust him.
You trust drunk Chris Jones?
Absolutely, with my full heart. Speaking of a man that would probably, well, I don't know, maybe Kirk Cousins would be getting lit. Kirk Cousins, he's number two. I could see Kirk Cousins getting drunk if Minnesota ever wins the Super Bowl.
I absolutely could too. Oh my God, Kirk
I could
Cousins
see,
would go
I could see
nuts.
him getting hammered, and in a white dad kind of way.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. You know what I was about to say? Like dad at a barbecue is what I pictured Kirk Cousins while
yeah,
drunk.
I mean
Like
Kirk Cousins is. He
like
posted a picture with like his grill, and he's got all the chains
yeah. Like
now. He's blinged
I
out.
could see him getting like plastered in the same way that your dad would, where it would just become like a circle of lawn chairs. Somehow a circle of lawn chairs would be formed at that Super Bowl parade, and Kirk Cousins would be leading it.
Yeah. I mean, aside from that, he is a pretty good quarterback.
Oh,
And I
absolutely.
mean, it is the kind of thing. It's the kind of thing where it's like he has been so good at manipulating the free agent market to get a ton of money. His Vikings contract, he made so much money. He's incredibly rich. It's an incredibly good free agent deal that he signed, and I don't expect anything less. Um, in terms of landing spots, there's really been, I mean, you can kind of narrow down the teams that are looking at quarterback, just going through them. You've got the Bears, Commanders, and Pats are out of it probably because of where they sit in the draft. They're probably going to go into it with the draft. So that kind of leaves like Steelers, Broncos, Giants, Falcons. And out of all those teams, the Falcons are the one that's been where the rumblings have been. Um, and I'll maybe throw that over to you. How do you think Kirk Cousins fits on a Falcons team?
I think a lot better than any of the quarterbacks that the Falcons have had in the last little while. I mean, I think Kirk could pretty much fit. I mean, in a sense, he is the exact thing that they would want. They want somebody who is going to be able to use the weapons that they currently have in Atlanta, and I think Kirk Cousins is that guy. I think he absolutely, without any issue, would be able to do that. So at least on Atlanta's part, I feel like it's a no risk move. Other than potential injury, maybe you're worried about the Achilles happening again or what have you. But it's just, I'm not worried about it if I'm Atlanta. I think you bring him in and I think you make a run at it because, I mean, I don't personally. How good is their defense? I guess I know a lot about their offense, but their defense kind of is a thought that doesn't
The
hit me
defense
as
is
much.
pretty good. The
Okay.
defense is pretty good because
Okay.
I mean, they've got some good players. Like they have Jesse Bates, and he was fantastic. They've got and AJ Terrell is another good one.
Yeah.
And they're not world beaters, but they're not bad. Like they're pretty good.
Yeah. But I mean, you can speak. Everybody knows about that offense. That offense has had everything but a good quarterback and a good offensive coordinator for as long as all of us can remember. And
Yeah.
it's the type of thing where I think if anybody can use those weapons I mean, to their best, it's Kirk Cousins. And
Yeah.
I'm really excited to see him play with. Hopefully, Kyle Pitts gets used as more of than just a distraction. Drake London hopefully sees a bit of action. He's got a receiving threat behind him in oh my gosh, Bijan Robinson.
Bijan
Why was I
Robinson.
forgetting that?
Yep.
whatever. But like he's got so many threats in that offense, that so many young threats too, that I think if he does go to Atlanta, they would be my. I don't. Would it be considered a shocker to say that they'd be fairly good next year? Like I don't even know, but
They would probably pretty easily win the NFC. No, maybe not pretty easily. They'd be in the playoffs.
yeah,
I don't think they'd be an NFC like
no.
title contender or
No.
anything, but they'd
But
probably make
that's
it in
not
the
what I
playoffs.
mean though. Like just think about how good Atlanta has been in the last little while. Like I don't think it's a controversial statement to say that I think with
No.
Kirk Cousins leading the charge, they would be one of the better
Yeah.
teams in the NFL. And I think they'd be a fun team to watch. I'd be tuning into some Atlanta games.
Yeah, you mentioned it. The Achilles is a big concern because I mean, he is old
He
at
was
this point. He's
never a mobile
36.
quarterback though, which is the one thing that I guess
No,
he has very
he
good
was,
pocket
but I mean,
presence, but he's not.
it is an Achilles injury is still a big deal. Like
Yes.
I get that he's not mobile
Yes.
and it's not something he's gonna need, but he's still like pushing like at this
I
point
guess-
36 like
I
the
guess
wrong
the
side of
question is,
35.
like, at what point do you start expecting Kirk to just become your check down field general, and is that still enough for Atlanta to go far?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because I don't.
I don't hate I don't hate the idea of Kirk Cousins on the Falcons, but it's not what I would do if I was Terry Fontenot. Like I think there's a oh shit, things are moving. Well, wait, we'll see if I get kicked out of here. I'm gonna keep talking until I do. The projectors just started to move without me touching anything. That's really funny.
For context for everybody watching this, the place that Caleb is recording in is now closing.
Yep. So we're gonna see if I get a little funny. Hey, you need to leave. We'll see how it goes. Let me make my point about Kirk Cousins before I get forcibly escorted from this building. I think that in terms of what I would do if I was the Falcons, I think there's an obvious answer. An obvious answer. I think every single team should be jumping on this. I think every single team should be jumping on this. Even the Seahawks, to an extent, I would be happy if they did this. Justin Fields is out there. The Bears are drafting Caleb Williams.
That's true.
Justin Fields has
It doesn't
been,
sound like the price for him is anywhere as high as that, or at least what I would have thought.
it's a second round pick plus maybe something else,
Yeah.
which is not like that's nothing.
That's not bad.
If you get your quarterback of the future, it's not like Justin Fields has been a bust. It's not like Justin Fields has been a bust. He has been like fairly like serviceable to
Dude.
good with a subpar Bears offense. Putting him in that Atlanta offense?
Do you think that Justin Fields has a breakout year if he goes to Atlanta? I think I already know the
Oh,
answer to that,
absolutely.
but, yeah.
Absolutely. I think that I mean one of our biggest videos on this podcast is the whole Justin Fields Caleb Williams debate, and like I think we were both strongly on the side of keeping Justin Fields, and that's clearly not what the
Yeah.
Bears are going to do.
No, it's not.
I could be swayed at this point. I don't know. I still think it's way too early to give up on him. I know this is kind of a weird situation for Chicago, but I do think it's early to give up on him, and I think teams should be jumping at the bit because a quarterback this young and this good does not become available for this little compensation very often. And when you're a team that like
mean-
Atlanta that already has a bunch of young weapons,
And we've seen it happen in the past where these younger-ish quarterbacks who, I mean, just had a couple doubts. Some people within their own organization doubting them moving on and becoming all-time greats. I mean, it's not uncommon. Like or maybe it's not common, but it's not uncommon, right? Where it's the type of thing where I absolutely could see him going to a team like Atlanta and making the best out of a pretty good situation over there offensively. I mean, I don't think their O-line is very bad. I think they have, I mean, I've already spoken what I think about their weapons, but I think that Justin Fields, like Kirk Cousins, would be able to make it work. He's made it work with a lot less with the Bears. I mean, DJ Moore is definitely better than Drake London, but even then, I mean, you just look all around that locker room and there's talent, which I think is just huge for his chances at doing something really good in Atlanta in the next couple years.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I do think part of it is the vibe too. I don't know. I think just seeing Fields in the all black
The vibe.
Falcons uniforms, like the retro ones,
Oh yeah.
that's just like I don't know, man. That
Something
gets
about
me going.
Atlanta with a mobile quarterback again.
It does. It is a little Vic reminiscent. Because I mean, other than Lamar, Fields is the best mobile quarterback in the NFL. Pair that with Bijan, pair that with Kyle Pitts, pair that with Drake London. Mm. That's why I think like Kirk Cousins would not be a great move because it's just like youth, and then a 36
Yeah,
year old quarterback. I don't know.
yeah.
Maybe that's what they need, but I don't know.
I
I
think that
think
I think that it would be the best overall, and I know it's a little bit heresy considering he was just playing with the best wide receiver in the NFL, but it's probably the best overall offense all around the board that he's had.
overall,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like most talent in a room, and I'm really curious to see what he can do with that. We've seen him with a lot of talent around him. That's not to say that he has not had help.
And he was fantastic. I don't want to make it sound like Kirk Cousins isn't good.
No,
He's
no.
been fantastic.
But he
I
just
would honestly like.
my question
I would
going into this
honestly
year is
here.
whether he
I'll
still has that deep ball and still has the
yeah.
necessary bits and pieces to his game that made him so successful on a lot of those teams. Does he still have that? Can he pull it off? Right? Like, would he be able to? Let's say Drake London has been looking for somebody his whole career so far of like 2 years or whatever who can hit him on that deep ball. What if that person isn't Kirk Cousins? As sad as it would be to
Yeah.
see big old
I wouldn't.
Kirk go.
I would. I would still have some doubt in that. Like I do think he can probably return to that level. Um, I don't know. I just don't think like you're gonna get like 2 or 3 good more years out of him. I think I'd rather build young. In terms of where I think he would actually go, I think the Steelers is a great choice. I think that's more of like a ready-made roster in terms of what that defense looks like, and you've already got some good weapons in terms of like George Pickens, namely. I think that would be the big one for me. If I was actually to name a destination I'd want to see him go, it'll probably be Atlanta or returning to Minnesota. Um,
Okay, well,
yeah, that's kind
we've
of
now spent 17 minutes on two.
yeah. Kirk Cousins deserves his time in the spotlight.
Oh,
Though.
absolutely.
We can rip through some.
Big old
We can rip
Kirko
through some more of
deserves
these.
his flowers.
That's true. Christian Wilkins. So this one was interesting because this was one of the ones where we thought that he would get the tag. Like it seems like the kind of thing where, yeah, he like it's Christian Wilkins. Who else are you going to use the tag on? I don't think they use the tag on anybody. The Dolphins. So one of the NFL's best young defensive tackles is on the open market, and that one's a big surprise. And that one is, I mean, because Chris Jones would be the big fish, but he's probably not going to get out of KC, and you'd pay. It would be an absurd amount of money, and he, while still in his prime, is on the older side ish. Don't have those problems with Christian
maybe
Wilkins.
has like a couple more seasons in him.
I'd say even more than that. Like he's not Kirk Cousins old. Because how I don't know if it says in this how old he is. Chris Jones is 30, so it's not like he's still got a like I'd probably say 4 to 5 years left in him. But Christian Wilkins, like this guy has played super well, and I think has got his best years ahead of him. Like I think he's just coming into his prime, and he's been fantastic. This would be if I'm because I know I keep bringing up the Seahawks. I haven't because we do need
I'd
interior
love to see
defensive
Christian
line help, and
Wilkins
this
on the Seahawks. That'd be nice.
would make me scream like a schoolgirl. Like try to get my live reaction to that, and that would be if we ever have like breaking news on this podcast and the Seahawks sign someone, I'm gonna go fucking nuts. But yeah, no, I haven't heard too many rumors in terms of where he's going, just because I think it was pretty widely assumed he wouldn't make it to this point. Do you have any potential teams, potential fits that you'd like to see him on?
Yeah, I was actually talking with the newest, like, inside the locker room source, may be named Pete Carroll, and he was telling me all about how Christian Wilkins is coming straight to the Seahawks. Or in other words, I have no fucking clue. But I would love to see him on Seattle, like you said. I think he'd be an excellent addition to the team. I just don't know. Like, there's a lot of these players that I just haven't heard a lot about, and he is definitely one of them. And I think a big part of that is the franchise tag, like you mentioned. I think that really, or him not getting a franchise tag, really just completely takes away from the fact that it was surprising. Nobody thought he'd get here, and now we're just kind of scrambling to figure out what's next, to figure out where the hell is he going to go. I mean, is there any thought to whether Miami could just grab him back right again?
Sign him?
Yeah.
Yeah, well that's the thing with the franchise tag is if you're going to sign him to a longer extension, you can still franchise tag him and then extend him. So if they were going to do that, I would question why they didn't just franchise tag him and then do that. Like that's what the Bears just did with Jalen Johnson, their cornerback. They franchise tagged him and then they gave him a 4-year extension today. Sometimes the deal just doesn't get done, but they'll still normally franchise tag people just make sure they don't get out. So I do think that's kind of an indication that he's not going back, which is super interesting. Um, in terms of teams, I think the Seahawks is probably pretty unrealistic. I don't think they'd make that move, especially because they're probably just going to bring Leonard Williams back, which I'm more than okay with because he was fantastic. Um, I almost wonder. I assume he's probably going to want to sign with a contender or at least a fringe contender. Um, I haven't heard anything, so I'll just spitball. Buffalo cut a lot of cap.
Do they have enough
Maybe
though?
that's something.
I thought I'd been hearing that
I don't
Buffalo
know.
still had like nothing, despite cutting all those players.
That could be the case. I don't have the cap numbers in front of me, so I'm just kind of spitballing out fit. Um, Maybe Jim goes to Jim Harbaugh down in LA. They don't have a lot of cap room either. Um, yeah, I think it's probably going to be a fringe contender that has enough cap space to accommodate him. And so since I don't have that list in front of me, I probably can't name one right off the top of my head in terms of where he would go, but he'd be a fantastic addition to any team, I think.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think, like you said, I don't have anything to add past that. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think he could totally fit in just about any team that is a contender. Like you mentioned, it's
Mhm.
just a money thing. Obviously, he's going to be looking for a pretty big payday. I don't know. Yeah, no, I don't got anything more to add on that. I'd just be bullshit. So let's
Yeah.
move on to Daniil Hunter,
We can
who
add
is
to
our number
Daniil
four.
Hunter, yeah.
Yeah, which again, yeah, I
Yeah.
actually agree with you. I think he kind of fits in the same category there, where it's, I mean, two very different players. One's edge, one's defensive tackle. But Hunter definitely is one of those players who has stuck around in the NFL for a few years now, and is going to be heading to a contender. I feel like without a doubt on this one, like you mentioned, he's 29, doesn't have a chip. You got to think he's going to be trying.
Daniil Hunter being 29 is insane to me. I don't know. Like he's 1 year older than Christian Wilkins. I feel like Daniil Hunter has been in the league forever. I feel like he's been in the league since I started watching football like 11 years ago. I don't. I That is so strange to me. That's yeah, that's crazy. Maybe he entered the league really young or something. I don't know. Because like I feel like he's been around forever. It feels like Christian Wilkins is like a young guy and Daniil Hunter is like a 36-year-old veteran chasing a ring.
I have a feeling
but
that
I know that's not
I kind of agree with you a little bit, but that's not to say that I have a feeling Christian Wilkins just entered the league later, because that you said that and I think that sounds right.
Yeah, it's probably something like that. Like the gap between their draft years is probably still pretty big. But in terms of the player himself, I mean, he's obviously been super productive for most of his career and is coming off a season where he was absolutely fantastic. A lot of that does have to do with the kind of defense Minnesota was running, where they would just blitz the shit out of the quarterback on every drive. And he benefited from that, but it doesn't mean you're not going to get a good player either. Um, I think this one would be really, really interesting too. Um, Again, like you kind of said, Simon, in terms of fit, it's pretty similar. Where it's probably an edge contender with a lot of cap room. And honestly, I think that for both of the guys we just talked about, the Falcons could be another fit for these guys. I honestly don't see why not. I think that's dependent on whether you do the Kirk Cousins thing or not. If you do the Kirk Cousins thing or not, you probably don't have any breathing room left. But if you do the Justin Fields thing, then why not add to your defense and try and toughen up things to actually make a run for the playoffs and try to be one of those number one teams in the NFC. Like I that wouldn't shock me at all, honestly. In terms of other potential fits, um, yeah, like I maybe yeah, they've kind of got. I was going to say Jacksonville. Maybe they've got a pretty crowded lineup. Maybe a place like Houston.
Houston would be cool,
I'm,
because
Houston would be cool.
that would make that D line really really menacing. I mean, Will Anderson,
Yeah.
Daniil Hunter, that sounds like it'd be pretty scary.
That would be.
Jacksonville, like you said, I agree with you on the crowded thing. I feel like I don't know if that's necessarily a great fit, but I do see what you're going for with that.
Yeah. I was thinking Josh Allen being paired across with Danielle Hunter, but then that really puts
What
the nail in the
happens?
coffin on Trayvon
I
Walker.
was about to say, yeah. What would you
Yeah.
do with Trayvon Walker at that point? Because I mean, you can't really have him rushing.
That
You-
means you
he'd
that
be
means you
deaf.
that means you've given up. That
Yeah.
means you've given up on him. Which I mean, I don't know if they're that far away from doing. But I think the nice thing about Danielle Hunter is he's probably a lot cheaper than Christian Wilkins, honestly. I mean, edge players get a lot more, but I do think Christian Wilkins is going to be valued higher. So I think that might be
Danielle
a
Hunter's
nice,
not getting
a nice
long-term
one.
deal either.
Yeah, I could see that. I'd probably see him on a 2 to 3 year deal.
Yeah,
That would probably be my
compared
guess.
to
Which honestly,
Christian Wilkins is going to get probably 3-4.
yep, I would agree with that. If we want to move into someone who's actually old, we could talk about Tyron Smith.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's 33. Okay,
33.
I'm not bad. I'm not dumb.
it would have been really funny if you were wrong though. Like, holy smokes, that guy's only 27.
Yeah. Like no,
But
he's
no.
he's
No,
an
Tyron
elder
Smith
statesman
has
of
been-
the NFL.
Yeah, he's been around there.
He's been around for a while. This one was surprising to me. Like I didn't realize that he would be hitting free agency. I mean, he's just kind of one of the guys I would just assumed he was going to be on the Cowboys his whole career. But I guess that's not the case. Age is definitely a factor, but if you're a team who's looking for offensive tackle help and you're looking for it fast, I mean,
I will say, out of all the players we've talked about so far, he is the one that I think I fully expect to want a big payday. Whether that only be for 1 year or 2 year or whatever he actually. I fully expect him to be requesting a lot of money, and he's probably going to get it for at least 1 year. I'm curious
yeah,
if you
it
disagree
would
on
be a
that,
short.
but I feel like I've heard stuff
I
about
kind
him
of do
feeling
just because of
underpaid.
age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's just the fact he's been underpaid for so long that it feels like he's going to get some sort of payday.
Yeah, I could see that. I don't know. I do think the age part of it is a big thing, to where teams will say we're not going to give you as much money because you're not 28 anymore. I do think that's a thing. I mean, he's still going to command a ton of money because he's still Tyron Smith, but I don't know. I don't think it's going to be to the same level as some of these other guys. In terms of potential landing spots, oh boy, how much do I know the offensive lines of teams off the top of my head without using Google?
At least I'm not the only one.
Geez, which teams just have a bad offensive line? I mean, I like again the Sea.
I mean, Bengals is where
I could.
goes.
Yeah,
like,
Bengals is a good one. I could throw out the Seahawks for literally every one of these because I mean I know our
Seahawks need
needs and our
everything.
needs are
everything.
no, they don't need everything, but they need offensive and defensive line,
Yeah.
and that's kind of what all of these guys have been. That's why I can throw out Seahawks for like literally every one of these, except for Kirk Cousins.
Nah, bring in Kirko.
But-
I want to see Kirko on the Seahawks.
Oh God no, God no.
Don't worry about it.
Trying to get younger from Gino than you actually get older. That would be atrocious. Yeah, no. The Bengals is a good fit, but I don't know if they have the cap space for that.
Ever. Yeah, no, that is the tough thing. Where it's just like the reason I threw out Bengals is my head just goes like if I'm the Bengals, after my franchise quarterback has now suffered 2 season-ending injuries. Or no. Last year was it a season-ending injury last year? I all of a sudden I'm blanking.
Yep, it was. Joe
Yeah.
Burrow is still not throwing.
Yeah.
Like he's still hurt.
Well, and the thing that
Big
people are
one.
talking about, I'm sure this got to you at some point, Caleb, but like people are talking about exactly what kind of hand injury he got. No quarterback in the history of the NFL has ever suffered the type of hand injury that Joe Burrow suffered,
Yeah.
which
It was a
people
weird
are now
one.
questioning whether or not he will ever be able to return to the same form. Because the biggest issue that a lot of people who, then again, not NFL quarterbacks, dealt with when suffering this injury is a dart throwing motion, which, again, not identical to an NFL throw or a football throw, but not that far off. And that's worrying a lot of people as to whether Joe Burrow might be coming back next year with not quite the same arm that he used to have, which really will force him to really rely on a lot of other things. He's a good quarterback. Well, he's a very well-rounded quarterback. So that's not to say he needs to rely on deep throws to get anywhere, but it is something that my head immediately goes to when we talk about a quarterback like him, of maybe giving him a bit more time in the pocket and giving him some more protection after a few season-ending injuries wouldn't exactly be a bad thing.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know if I'd quite be like to the point where I don't know this. I don't know the injury inside and out, but I wouldn't be. I think the fact that he suffered it like in week 9 helps him because he's got a long time to recover. And I know I heard from that he was saying he's going to get back to throwing in May, and that he feels like he's not going to be held back, and that it's like a normal kind of off season for him where he wouldn't be throwing that much anyways at this point. So it's just kind of going to be transitioning into the next season. I think that'll be good for him. I think having a training camp will be good for him. He's been injured. Like, I don't think he's ever had a full training camp or a full preseason. I know he's been injured like literally every year. So hopefully that helps him kind of get back into it. I hope he's still the same player. Like, the NFL would lose
absolutely.
a lot if he's
not. I'm throwing out things hoping, obviously, that it's not the case. But that is the thing that has been talked about. Multiple online doctors, which again, take as you will, have come out and said that like the type of injury that he had suffered is much more severe than maybe you would initially thought for a hand injury. But still,
because it's a tear of a ligament in a hand. It's still like very significant. So yeah, like I to that point for Tyron Smith, I do think the Bengals are a good fit. Before we move on to the next guy on the list, we can make our last guy on the list. I think. But before we move on to him. Yeah, before we move on to our last guy, who I think is a pretty exciting name, I do want to throw out one more Tyron Smith landing spot that I thought of, and let me know what you think of this. I don't have the cap numbers in front of me, but I'd be willing to bet that this team has a decent amount of cap space. I would be pretty shocked if they don't. They don't have any, like, I can't think of any name brand offensive line players that they have, and I can think of a big reason why they would need a franchise left tackle to come in right about now, and that's a team with a number 1 overall pick.
Ooh.
Chicago. If I'm drafting Caleb Williams, I probably want to give him the best possible chance to succeed.
Yeah.
And why wouldn't you bring in a guy like Tyron Smith?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I'm looking at that and I'm thinking that might feel right.
I don't disagree with that. I think the Bears are going to be spending a lot on their offense this offseason, whether it be just signing Caleb Williams to that rookie deal, as well as, I mean, I think Tyron Smith is another really good person who they could bring in. I think it's also a weapon thing. I would like to see the Bears bring in a couple more people for him to use. Like, I know you're going to know their offense a bit better than I do, but, like, off the top of my head, DJ Moore, Mooney, I don't even know who their running back is right now. Is it still? It's not Montgomery. He wasn't even there last year.
He's on the Lions. He's on the Lions.
Who is their running back?
It's probably. Oh my God.
Exactly.
What's his name?
Like, they don't have any weapons. Like,
He's not even bad. He's not even bad.
Is he not?
Oh my God. He's not bad.
Blanking on someone who's good.
He's not okay. He's not like a star or anything. He was like a 6th, 5th round guy who's just like topped up and been pretty good. They got Roschon Johnson last year, but he's not their main guy. Who is the guy? What's his name? Oh my God!
Are you gonna say it and I'm gonna feel dumb too?
No, you're not. He's not a name brand guy. I'm gonna look it up after the podcast and be like, oh my God. He's been pretty good. I know he's a. I know he. Maybe look up Bears running back for me. Yes, Khalil Herbert. Yes. Yeah. That was a guy. Or he was like a 5th round guy. He's done pretty well. No, I felt dumb because I was like, I'd known about this guy.
You know your shit a little bit better, more than I do when it comes to.
I was like, that pissed me off. But he's not bad. I mean, I get your point. Like, he's not a name brand guy, but I don't think running back is the most important position. I think it's a lot more important to get your offensive line in shape. I think what the Bears should do.
That's not what I was saying. I'm just saying that, like, there's a lot of things in that offense that the Bears have to work on as well. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, Cole Kmet has been pretty good at tight end. But I do think adding another receiver is probably a good idea. Where they do that, though, I do think that's probably the draft. I do think you hit that Well, because the rumor mill is that hopefully, if you're the Bears, because there's top three quarterbacks, right? The Bears are at 1 and are at 9. So the goal for the Bears is going to be you get the top three quarterbacks to go, you get Caleb. Then you have to hope that one of the top three receivers falls to you at 9, because that's either Neighbors, Odunze, or
Harrison.
oh God, what? Yeah, oh, the big one. He's not going to fall to them.
Yeah.
It's either Neighbors
Yeah, no,
or Odunze. Harrison's going number 4 to the Cardinals probably. But you got to hope either Neighbors or Odunze, probably Odunze, will fall to them. But even if they don't get that, I think you can probably. I assume they still have a second round pick. You can probably pick up someone pretty decent with that. This is a very good receiver draft.
my other thing that I was going to throw at you, I don't know how much this person is wanting, but he is on our list here, our lovely list that is sitting right in front of me. What do you think the chances are the Bears take a swing at Calvin Ridley, or at a wide receiver like Ridley, like a vet?
I don't know. If I'm the Bears, I'm looking a lot more at the draft for receivers, because the thing about the draft, and especially with how the recent years have been playing out, is that the receiver talent has been fantastic. Like think about the last few years of receiver talent. It's guys like Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, like all of these guys coming in and just lighting up the league. And this draft is especially good for that. Like this draft is fantastic for that. You've got the top 3, but you've also got guys kind of scattered throughout that are going to be like legit playmakers. And there's guys at the end of the first round. You're looking at A.D. Mitchell will probably be gone by then, but even a guy like Xavier Worthy, who just set the record for the 40 time at the Combine, he'll be there to the Bears at the start of the second round. Do you take a flyer on him just because of the speed? I think Troy Franklin out of Oregon's a potential guy. Keon Coleman out of Florida State. These are all like fringe first to second round guys that are still like genuine talents that I think the Bears will have a shot at, and I think that it would be smart for them to grab if they don't get Neighbors or Odunze at 9. So I think you can cover your bases pretty easily if you're Chicago at the wide receiver spot. I don't think reaching for a vet is like necessarily the best idea at this point, just because you have options. There's still a chance you get Neighbors or Odunze, and then even if you don't, you can follow it up and hit that need again in the second round. That's kind of where my head's at in terms of that. Speaking of weapons, I know we've been talking for a while, so we can wrap this up with a conversation on our last guy on the list. That's Saquon Barkley. And so he's definitely not going back to New York after they chose Daniel Jones over him, essentially, which I mean, absolutely smart, terrible organization. But he's a free agent, one of the best running backs. If you're going to make an argument for paying any running back, it's probably going to be a guy like Saquon Barkley, who's been a proven difference maker at the position. One of the only guys at his position where you can say he's a genuine, like, generational kind of guy.
Very well-rounded.
Well-rounded, he's a fantastic back if he can stay healthy.
Like, it's like, and this is not an insult to him at all, but like poor man's Christian McCaffrey to a certain degree, where like he really can do a lot of all that. Not in the same receiving way, but like at least out of the backfield, he really is a game changer. I think a lot of teams will be interested in him, especially if there isn't a. I'm curious to see what kind of contract he gets, because I think it is the type of thing where we've talked about how running backs are getting arguably, according to them, underpaid. And I'm really curious to see what kind of contract he gets, because I think he has the chance to kind of, I don't know if reset the market is the right way to put it, but it's like that type of deal is where the opportunity he has. I'm curious to see what kind of contract he gets. He's 27 right now, which isn't old. It's still fairly young, but not really for a running back.
Nope.
Like most
that's a good point.
Most elite running backs usually start running out of gas not too long after 27. So I guess the biggest questions I have is how much money, first off, and how long of a contract, I guess, could you see Saquon getting?
I think I'm hitting max 4 years. Because you're right.
Until like 31.
Yeah. I do think you might have to make that sacrifice to where like the last couple of years maybe aren't as good. I do think Saquon's the kind of guy where if there's anybody who's going to kind of outlive the average mileage of a running back, it's going to be him. and 31 isn't that far past it. I think they start running out of gas generally around 30. So I do think it's like you get one bad year out of him at the end of his contract. I don't think that's that bad, but I wouldn't go anything over that. In terms of landing spot, and money will be interesting. Yeah, like you said, like hopefully it kind of reinvigorates the running back market a little bit. I think it will to an extent. But I do think you're going to get a really good deal on a really good player just because of the position he plays, and I do think that's something to take into consideration too. In terms of landing spot, though, like I want to get to that because oh my God, please fucking play for the Houston Texans. I just like it's been in my head for the last 2 months, and I want it so bad. I'm not a Texans fan. I want it so bad. It just fits so perfectly. I'm not even like considering any other taker. Devin Singletary, who cares?
No, it's not Singletary. It's the other guy. Who am I thinking of right now? Like Pierce? What's his name again?
Damian Pierce. He kind of got. He hasn't run quite as well.
Oh, okay.
This season, he kind of fell off a little bit to where they started using Singletary a lot more. The Texans' running game was not actually that good, even though those two guys are like good young talents.
Yeah.
They weren't as good, and I honestly do think that's almost a benefit to Saquon because Saquon's problem has always been injury.
The Texans certainly.
So at least you have insurance, and yeah, money is a big thing. I don't know. It's just like maybe I pick my free agent fits a little bit too much based off of vibe. Justin Fields to the Falcons. Ooh, baby, that vibe feels right. Saquon Barkley to the Texans, the same kind of thing. It's just like pairing him up with CJ Stroud. I don't know. There's just something about that. I just want to see Saquon on a good team, man. I feel so bad for him getting stuck. Yeah. I know that doesn't matter quite as much. I just want to see him on a good team. And the Texans vibe just feels right. I saw a jersey swap 2 months ago, and I'm just like, I'm all in. I don't even know where else like he could go. I'm so focused in on this, and I'm gonna be. This is the most like non-Seahawks news, like non-Seahawks free agent related news. That'll be devastated if he doesn't go to the Texans. I don't know. It's just like it's in my heart.
Yeah. No, I don't think I can argue against that. I think that fits really good because I mean, money like we talked about, that's huge with the Saquon deal, like it is for any big name player that we've talked about, and I think the Texans are the type of team that can absolutely pay him, and like you mentioned, is in desperate need of a running back. I don't know. I mean, we'd just be listing teams that need a running back. Like fuck. I mean, you mentioned Herbert playing well. Bears is another one that I'd throw out where like a running back, adding a weapon like Saquon would be nice to add just to help out Caleb Williams, allow them to not have to focus too heavily on the pass game. Like, there are a lot of options out there for Saquon, and I think there'll be a lot of suitors, but I think Texans are a great example of a team that would work really, really well for him.
Yeah. I think that's pretty much it for the list. I don't know if you want to like get into some deep Jonathan Grenard conversation, but
that's about as far as I.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of names here that like this is a really deep class, I will say, at least in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like there are a lot of players throughout that are very, very good. I think
especially after some of the cuts. I don't think we'll have time to do a full segment on it, but like some of the names that recently got added to there: Tre'Davious White, Jamal Adams, Quandre Diggs, Justin Simmons, Russell Wilson. Lots of names out there.
Yep, and I'm sure they'll just continue to stack. Like, as teams try and cut as much fat as they can heading into, I mean, the opportunity to try and see what they can
Illegal tampering, period.
Illegal tampering.
Big legal tampering, period fans over here.
Oh, yeah. Put that on a shirt.